Hi everybody, welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to cover a flip-flop winch. Now this winch I first saw Morris Kohansky do. I think it's something that everybody should know if you're traveling in the bush with vehicle or even without, because it can be used as a hoist. It can be used to unstick trees that happen to maybe fall not where you want them and they get caught up in branches. It's a lot safer than trying to physically move them yourself for large trees. And I showed this in an article for Self-Reliance Illustrated magazine. But it's a little hard to see with pictures. I think this is something that you need to see in person to see how it all works together. So Rick and I are going to show you how to do this today. Okay, first off, in order to process the size of trees that you need for this technique, a lot of times a folding saw might be a little shy. And so you might have to make one of these, like an actual frame saw. And I carry this blade, actually this blade, in my belt all the time. And this is what the belt looks like right here, and we make these at Bushcraft Northwest. And the belt is held in a sleeve like this, right between, in the middle of the belt there. It's two pieces of leather. And then you have 3 screws that hold the blade in place on your belt. And then this just, obviously you wear it like a regular belt. And then you use those screws when you're constructing your saw. See, the screws go here and here to keep the blade in place, and then you have 1 extra because you have 3 on your belt. And then this is something that we show how to make in our winter courses, because it's such an important tool to have, not only for this technique but to process larger pieces of firewood, which is just crucial in the wintertime. Like I said, a folding saw sometimes just isn't enough. So you can whip one of these saws out in just a few minutes, and it saves you a lot of time and a lot of calories. So, and that's what we use to cut these logs today for this technique. So let's take a quick second to discuss rope selection. You want a rope that doesn't have elasticity built into it, and unfortunately a lot of the ropes that we have in the woods are climbing ropes, paracord, things like that, and they are elastic because of their intended purpose. The reason we want rope that doesn't have that is because should the rope break, it's not going to snap back at you with the force that a rope that has elasticity built into it will. So that's the reason. And I recommend, especially for a vehicle, buy a rope for that purpose or a tow strap and keep it in a separate bag, stow it away, and don't use it for other things. That way it'll stay nick-free, dirt-free, and you know when it's time to use it for this purpose, you have the right tool and it's not been compromised. So that's the first thing. Second thing, once you have your rope or your tow strap or whatever, you're going to tie it to your anchor point. Make sure it's a solid anchor. Dead standing trees you can actually pull over depending on what you're pulling, of course, but you want to be sure that your anchor is very solid. And once you establish your anchor, I always go at least 1 round turn around that anchor point, because that's going to take a lot of the strain off of your knot. Okay? And for this purpose, I use a tensioning knot, and I'll show you why. So I just do our standard tensioning that like we do at our courses, like so. Similar to a taut line hitch, you can just use a taut line hitch if you're familiar with that one. And the reason we do a tensioning hitch is because you really want this rope to pull perfectly straight with what you're towing. And so with the tensioning knot, I can push it in this way, and I can adjust the angle by how I pull this knot around. And then once it's wherever I want it to be, I'll come back and I'll tie a couple of half hitches around this loose end just to be sure it's extra secure. So this winch requires 2 poles in order to work. So you have what's called your lever pole, which will be this one, and your drum pole, which is this one. And the drum pole just flips from side to side like this. So after you make a turn of your lever pole, right, you run out of room because the ground's there. So your drum pole flips over, and then you come back with your lever pole. And that's it. You just keep doing it until you've done whatever you came to do. So As you can see, these are pretty thick pieces of ponderosa pine. They can be twice as long, twice as thick. I mean, it just totally depends on what you're doing. This is going to be fine for most applications, it's like snowmobiles or quads, motorcycles, that type of stuff. But Morris Kohansky said you could pull a house off its foundations with this winch, so I certainly don't doubt what he says. So it just, again, it depends on how thick of logs and how much strain your rope can take. So to put all this together, here's our rope going to the anchor, and this is going to be going to the quad that we're going to be pulling. And very, very simple. All you have to do is pass a loop underneath your drum pole like this, and then once you're there, this one comes to the other side like so. All right? Now you take your lever pole and this loop that you formed, you pick up your lever pole, you set it across like so, and then you tighten this all up together. Now if you do this correctly, when it spools, it's going to spool right up the drum pole like so. And you want to be careful that you don't cross the rope over itself, because if you're, depending on what you're pulling, you don't want to take a chance that the rope could actually sever itself by the pressure. So doing it the way I just showed will prevent any of the rope crossing over itself. So here's an overview of the whole setup. You can see our anchor back there tied to the oak tree, and then moving forward there's the winch all set up and ready to go, and then over here is the pretend stuck quad tied to its tow hitch. Okay, so if you notice, the winch is right pretty much in between the two, the anchor and the vehicle, because don't forget it's going to get short on, the rope's going to tighten from both ends, okay, not just your anchor, so make sure you leave yourself enough room to work. Alright, so my good buddy Rick and fellow Bushcraft Northwest instructor is going to show you how this all works. So right now he's starting with the lever pole. And now he's going to flip the drum pole over. He just made sure that the ropes weren't on top of themselves. You just kind of have to get it set up the first couple times. And there goes the drum pole flipped over. And now you can see he's making sure the lever pole is on the other side of your line. So, you know, when you flip that drum pole over, you have to make sure the lever pole is. You can hear the quad moving. And now the drum pole goes back over. And now this time I'll show the quad so you can see how it moves with each flip of the lever pole.
Well, as you can see, the end product, the rope is nice and straight, it doesn't cross. The drum pole is 90 degrees to our pull object that we're pulling, and our lever pole is in line with the object and the rope. And when we come down, when there's a lot of tension when the rope's under a lot of tension, sometimes the lever pole has to be tied down each time before you move your drum pole. Mike's made a loop here. He'll show you how to hook it up to that, to your lever pole.
Right, if this was under a lot of tension, it would want to, this lever pole, when you flipped it over, it would be under a lot of tension before you could actually do the drum pole over to flip it over. You know, you would be pulling it down and it would want to flip right up. So you would take this loop and put it right around the end of your lever pole like this, and then you could flip your drum pole safely.
With all maneuvers like this, you have to always be conscious about safety. This has some pretty large poles, there's ropes under a lot of tension, and both of those could cause some problems for you if something were to happen with the rope or the lever. So there's lots of tension here. You want to stay out of this area. You don't want to stand like I am right now. I'm just doing this to show you. You want to stay away from this junction as much as possible. You want to make sure your hands don't get close to the rope or between the different logs. And if the rope's going to break, it's going to most likely break at the anchor or at the item you're pulling. It's going to come towards you. So stay away from it as much as possible. You have to step over and move it. Just use caution and keep your hand away from any moving part. Make sure you got gloves and this type of thing to make sure you don't hurt yourself. And like with all things, use common sense. If you have any doubt, don't do it.
A lot of survival situations start because of a stuck vehicle unexpectedly. And if you know this technique and have some rope and a saw blade and are a little bit prepared, you can get yourself out of these situations without too much trouble. Now this is a powerful technique as Rick and I described, and so you have to use caution, you have to understand the technique and have the proper tools and respect what you're doing. But as long as you do that, you can do this very safely and again get yourself on the road again. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll come and train with us. You can visit us at bushcraftnorthwest.com for more information, products, things like that, and contact us anytime with questions. Thanks again. Thanks for watching.